Hello, everyone. How are you today? My name is Michael Gibson, and I'm trying to get my eyebrows to do what they're supposed to do. I've been growing thick hair there my whole life. This is a session that we're having today, a very special panel discussion, and we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about some of the things that happens in our lives, but in the lives of everyone. And oftentimes, we don't know how to articulate what's happening in our lives. So we try to ignore it. And as the Stoics would say, that, you try to muster your fear and corral it in one place. So then you can muster your courage and then tamp down that fear. And when we become fearful of potential outcomes in our lives, we tend to make bad mistakes instead of controlling that fear and knowing that no matter what you do today, tomorrow's coming. So you might as well do your best today because if you want to show up tomorrow, you want to make sure that you tackle some of the problems today or tackle them tomorrow. But make sure you thought about it first before you decide on a plan. That's one of the things most people don't naturally do. We're so oftentimes intimidated by the circumstances in which we're involved. And as we teach at norm therapy, circumstances always dictate the outcome of every situation. If you're in great circumstances, chances are your outcomes are going to be great. If you're in crappy circumstances, chances are your outcome is going to be crappy. That is totally up to you. People want to see you down, and it's really not their fault. People want to see you take the low road as often as you can. And it has nothing to do with them wanting to see that you experience at bad times. It more has to do with they're afraid of their own times in which they find themselves, and they just don't want to see you doing better than them. So we take a different perspective at norm therapy on just about everything, not because we're trying to be different or more right, or sometimes we're even wrong. No. We try to take a different perspective to give you an opportunity to look at yourself in different ways instead of just one. So you'll stop making those kind of decisions that you make that normally brings turmoil, disenchantment, sadness, limited outlook, and pain to your life. So without any further ado, I think I want to go ahead and ask the ladies to come in. We have Kim Carpenter here today, and we have Louisa Kibulo. She's actually in Kenya right now, Louisa. Since she comes in, hey, Louisa, hey, Kim, how are you ladies? Good to see you. We're going to stay off mute the whole time, so you don't have to be on mute. We're good. This whole interview, we're just going to stay off mute. How about telling us a little bit about yourself, Louisa?
All right. Hello. My name is Louisa Kibulo from Nairobi, Kenya. I am a norm therapist, level 4. At Aero, I'm a training and doctrine supervisor. And I'm also a writer. Sometimes I'm a real estate agent. And I am a wife and a mother. So that
Mhm.
is a whole summary of who I am.
We're going to delve into that today. And you, Kim Carpenter, please tell our audience a little bit more about
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Michael, and hi, Louisa. Good to see you. Yeah, I've been with Arrow since August of 2021, and I was in the pioneer cohort of our first norm therapy training program session or modules with Kelly. We finished up in December of 21 as the pioneer cohort, and Michael as the master instructor. And it's
you.
been a wonderful ride, challenging. It throw in all those dynamics of it, and it's been a great ride so far. And enjoy what I do. I'm a cat mom, and I like to do crafts in my spare time.
Well, yay for both of you. I mean, it's always good to have a healthy and happy uh, repose or place to be and find yourself your most comfortable. Home should be where it's at. I'm reminded that on today's episode, for those of you who don't know by now, but they're saying that Jimmy Carter is uh, is on the the other side of the mountain. He's on his way to his homegoing. And I was just reflecting on him with Kim and Louisa just prior to this airing. And I want to hear some of your thoughts on Jimmy Carter. Not any political thoughts, but the kindness of this man. I mean, a simple peanut farmer who became the most powerful man in the world, but his values from Habitat and Humanity. Kim just explained to me that he was actually teaching Sunday school most of his adult life. Just the kindness and the good-hearted nature of all things he touched, to include the love of his life, his wife, who was his best friend, and she went before him when he was supposed to go. She went before him. She actually died before him. And I'm thinking, he'll be reunited with her soon. Give me your thoughts on that, Kim. Tell me.
I think he is the essence of a true public servant. He was always working for others and doing good on the behalf of others. And I think what he did at Habitat for Humanity in helping build those homes for individuals that couldn't necessarily go the typical route of having a home and having a mortgage and being able to make that pretty much the success that it is today. And just that kind of golden heart, essentially, of someone that you don't typically see as a president or a leader, to bring that compassion to everything that he did.
I would absolutely agree. What about you? Being there in Nairobi, Kenya, Louisa, tell me, what did you know of Jimmy Carter?
Well, not too much, but what I know about him is that he sounded like a very relatable leader, somebody that understood what was happening on the ground with the people. And that is a very important characteristic of a leader and something that really they should all emulate. Because then how do you lead and you don't quite understand what the people are going through? So for him and all the stories I've had are just about how kind he was, how relatable he was. And I think that was quite an asset to America and to the world.
I like that perspective. I really do. I agree with you because from an international point of view, oftentimes you see politicians and you think, what is his end game? What does he want out of it? But you're right. Jimmy Carter was one of those presidents who thought about the people. Matter of fact, he was such the thinker about people, he actually micromanaged his way according to the autobiographies and all the different articles I read on over the years. And I had a chance to sit with him at a Braves game back in the early 90s and have a discussion on pretty open topics. He was a statesman. He was very bright. There was about nothing on the planet he didn't know something about. So that is my memory of Jimmy Carter. And I just like the fact that it was all about peanuts because I love peanut butter. So, okay, so you got it. Now, some people have an allergy to that, and I'm sorry about that. But definitely he was a great statesman as well. Okay, without any further ado, I'm interested in this topic. I say it all the time to people when I see them doing things against their own good judgment, against their own best interest. I see them say and do things that are terrible and hurt themselves and hurt others around them. And in my head, and it oftentimes come out of my mouth, I'll say something like, you need to take Life 101 just one more time, like it's a college course or something, because they miss out. A lot of people actually miss out on those anecdotal tales of wisdom and courage and how to treat a girl and stand up when they come to the table and open their car door and be a gentleman. I'm talking about guys, of course, and they just oftentimes miss out on that. Life 101, or something serious like be careful out there. You may want to be married before you're having so many children, so you have a bonded mate to the children. Oftentimes the women get pregnant, but that's not how it should be said. Men get women pregnant. It's the two-party deal. And a lot of women, I think it's now 54% of all marriages in the United States end in divorce, and 67% of all second marriages, I'm thinking I got this right, end in divorce. That is astounding, truly astounding, those numbers. And it has something to do with perspective of life, I believe. It has to do with, those life lessons that we no longer teach. And what do you think people are missing in this category, Kim? Insofar as those life lessons that cause them not to be together, because I understand you and Louisa both have happy relationships, and that's a good thing. But where do you find the flaws in a lot of people?
Well, I think you kind of alluded to that in the fact that people, when they're growing up in their formative years, they miss out on certain aspects that are going to benefit them going into those relationships and going into adulthood. And I think sometimes individuals go into their marriages or their relationships seeking that, looking to be, have that father figure or have the mother figure, and then that spouse or partner takes on those aspects, and it typically doesn't go well because you're there, it's a relationship in another methodology, not be parents to one another. You should be adults and supporting each other and supporting your growth. So I think a lot of people will take that into relationships and seek out what they didn't get.
I was looking at some of your pictures online, and you seem to have such the happy attitude about everything. There's some amazing photos, by the way, Kim. But
Thank you.
Early on in your life, did you feel protected?
Yes and no. Yeah, I think my dad, taught me some basic things that I needed, and I looked for him as my hero, and had, those things that a daughter will see their dad as. And but in that regard too, he was a workaholic, so he wasn't around a lot. And I was with my stepmother, raised by her, which she was abusive. I've talked about those stories before. And then my mom and my stepdad were kind of in and out of the picture a little bit. I saw them. So I had four parents essentially, and a lot of things were missing within each relationship. So I don't feel that I received everything. So I gave that to myself later in adulthood.
You certainly did that. Louisa, how about you? I mean, growing up, did you feel protected? And I'm asking this preface to question for a reason. Did you feel protected?
Yes, I felt very protected. I was almost a daddy's girl. I'll say almost because I don't want my siblings to to come in and contest. But yes, I did feel protected, and our community settings are also very tight, the nuclear family and the extended family as well. So it was a tight, as a child growing up in that setup, I did feel protected.
Well, I'm glad you both had elements of protection in your life. Statistically speaking, today, 40% of little girls in the entire country of the United States and in parts of the world are not as protected as they used to be some 20 years ago. It used to be that a little girl was protected by not only the father, of course, which is his role to do, but also the community. The community played a big part in that protection. That's no longer the case. And I think that that's affecting how children are growing up now, because when your most precious resource, your children, especially your little girls, are not protected, and it's widely known and observed by the entire community. And now there's such a push these days that people not care about one another. So without all of that going on anymore in our society, I think we're headed for a cliff. I think we're headed for the Niagara Falls, where we go over and hit the rocks below. No barrels, nothing, just hit the big rocks below. And what do you think we can do as a collective society, especially in the United States, But as a collective global society, what do you ladies think we can do about that? Anyone?
Louisa, go ahead.
All right. I think we have lost a lot of respect and boundaries on a global level. Because then if we had more respect, and respect, in my opinion, goes both ways, the parents, the adults, and the children. So if that was in place and we had our boundaries in place as well, then it would really help the situation.
I think I think respect is the base and foundation for everything livable and understandable within human nature. I think everything starts with respect, to even respect nature itself. Kim?
I see a lot of individuals walking around out there that are just lost. They look lost, they appear lost, and they don't have that structure at home. They're not maybe receiving it in school, or they're receiving too much of something and not that balanced effect of getting the teachings that they need. So I think it has to be that bigger picture of society or larger groups as a whole to kind of step in and not parent or take over, but have those resources available for those individuals to receive Life 101, as you say, or receive those lessons that they need that they're not getting anywhere else.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. How can you know to pass on to your children something when your legacy of supposing to have that information was never actually linked to that information? It's very difficult for someone to guess what to do next in life. So normally when people can't guess or, get a good idea, a reasonable facsimile of what should happen next, they just kind of withdraw and act like it's not there and end up with some terrible circumstances. People do that. Because I see nowadays people are reacting to things more than they're responding. And the reaction to me is just that knee-jerk emotion or activity that goes without thought. It's axiomatic. It's just reflexive. But I think response has to do with that pause, that general, let me think about what I'm going to say before I say it, and then do something about what I just gave critical thought to. And I think that's the biggest missing link to society today. I don't want to belabor this, but then again, I do. I think if we're going to be pissed off as a society, and we should be, and we're going to be upset at ourselves and other people about our state of affairs globally and how we become so numbed to the shock and awe of society. I think if we're going to be upset about that, we should at least talk about what are the potential solutions to it. And I think that politicians play a big part. I think the clergy, any religion around the world, play a big part of it. But I think that what most people get wrong about the direction we go in life is that they think they can dictate culture. And what people don't know is it's impossible to dictate culture. Culture dictates you. Culture is that, essence and conglomeration of, sometimes thousands of years of tradition and trust and mistrust and absorption, of course, expulsion of ideas and different parts of the society and development of languages. Culture dictates you. And I think what we need to start doing is teaching our children not only the culture of the white people or the Black people or the Indian people, but a more expanse diaspora of the world, because I think that everybody is now seen to have played a part in human evolution and history, and we sometimes exclude people from that evolutionary perspective, and it causes disjointedness in nations and families and friends. You can be married to a person from Africa or Asia or California, but yet your two cultures align very well, but they've never really touched until you And I think that that's a perspective that is lacking in not only world politics, but also in families and in connectivity and friendships. What do you ladies think about that? And this is all part of Life 101. What are those lessons we should all know, but we don't, and we keep missing and we keep bumping into brick walls in the middle of the night? Well, what are we doing wrong when we're not considering another person's culture and superimposing that over our lives to see where are the congruencies and how do we fit with them? What are we doing wrong in that?
I believe a lot of it comes from the generational traumas and teachings and things that have been passed on from years to years, throughout those generations until people are exposed. We've talked a lot before about kind of bubbles. People live in those bubbles. So you don't see it. I remember having a friend years ago that she had never been outside of her hometown, which was maybe, 10 miles either
Right.
way kind of a thing.
Wow.
So, and just to see, the dynamics of her and what she was dealing with in life, and to be like, well, why don't you want to travel? And she just couldn't see that for herself because she didn't know it. So I think the more people can learn and the more they're exposed to, you understand what other cultures are about and what they represent, and you have friends worldwide. I felt kind of lucky myself growing up. I never see race. I don't see color. I don't see, I just see people, as individuals. I don't care, who you are, what you look like, or any of that nature. So yeah, I think, yeah, there's a lot of dynamics that go into this, a lot of multiple factors.
It isn't as simple as one, two, three. I mean, it
Yeah.
takes some work and some effort and some thought. What about you, Louisa? What do you think about what we're discussing? It should have a different impact on you. But please tell us, what's your perspective?
Well, as you're both speaking, the word that came to mind was human culture, as we are discussing all our different cultures, the Western culture, the African culture, the Asian culture. So at the end of the day, the human culture, how do we just treat each other as people, not as, coming from here or coming from there. And in my opinion, that has improved a bit, especially with social media, because now you're able to peek into the lives of people in, let's say in the States, and we're thinking, oh, but we do that too, or we think in the same way. So that has helped social media and digitization. But of course, it has also taken it to a different level as well. But yes, just being able to understand and perpetuate that we are all humans, and then as the generational factor, Kim, that you have mentioned, if we are able to demonstrate that to the people who are coming up, the youngsters, then they can also hopefully carry it to the next generation, and then that will just hopefully is it Peter or Pata away or reduce?
Well, I'll tell you something. This is important. And just on both of your points, social media was the next area I was going into. And so I'm glad you brought it up, Louisa. Do you ladies believe it's too much information on the internet today? And the immediacy of it is causing people not to be able to absorb it and learn it as fast as they're receiving it. And if that's causing some type of a disconnect, even with not only the information, but society at large. What do you think about that, Kim?
In my day, when you wanted to know something, you went to the Encyclopedia Britannica, and that's where
Okay.
you received everything. And you had to read about it and learn about it and absorb it that way. So in some regards, social media is great, but in other regards, there is a big downside into how it's, people aren't communicating like they used to anymore. So, you might be standing beside a friend and you see them texting each other. And it's like, where's your voice? You're losing that right to be able to speak up and speak out for yourself. And so there's a lot of things that, you know, go with social media. There's got to be a good balance to it.
And you did just bring it up, Louisa. That's excellent, Kim, because I agree with you. You just did just bring up social media. Well, what are we lacking in social media? What is it? What is that disconnect? What can you tell us about that, Louisa? What is that disconnect?
In my opinion, you had mentioned that, when something happens, you take time to respond. But a lot of time with the social media that we have currently, there is really no response time. If you're unhappy, you just get on TikTok or TikTok Live, and there's so much sharing, or maybe even oversharing, or even pretending, and all of that.
Yeah.
So there's that is a great disadvantage, because then we do not have people stopping to first absorb and think about what their actions, what the repercussions of their actions are. By the time you go online and tell, I don't know, 10 million people what has just happened, you've not thought about it. Then you come back later and you say, oh, I'm sorry, I had not looked at it from this perspective. So, yeah,
confirmation bias is out there.
Oh
exactly.
my God, yes, the confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance are rampant and everywhere. People, they want to believe things. People want something to be true so badly, and it's not anywhere near the truth, but they want and need it to be true so badly that they forgive themselves for not paying attention to what's really happening, and therefore taking in the new information, maybe erroneous, it may be totally wrong, but they believe it, and they don't know how to retreat from that. So they get upset and with you. They hate you now because you don't agree with them, because no one likes to feel wrong. And I think that's happening on social media a lot. I think that people are so disenchanted with themselves as a result of being on social media that they take it out on others. I see like road rage. This has always killed me. I was in a taxi the other day, and a guy in a truck just decided to go from one lane to the next. No blinkers, nothing. I'm in the taxi, and I like to sit in the front seat. And it happened to be a Tesla taxi. And I looked to my left, and I can see this car getting ready to just bang right into us. And so I kind of like nudged the taxi driver and said, hey, look at this guy. He's beep, beep, beep. And the guy never stopped. We had to stop. He never looked, never stopped. And it was surprising what happened after that. My taxi driver, I was perturbed. But hey, we survived it. Let's move forward. But my taxi driver never let it bother him in the least. He said, oh, yeah, this guy needs to go back to driving school. That's all. That was the end of the conversation. And we moved on. I have watched videos. I have seen in person where people got out their cars and fought each other with bats and tire irons and guns. I've seen it all. What makes us such road rage warriors in the West? Principally, it happens in the West a lot, because I've been to a lot of countries and driven all over the world, and believe me, they drive much crazier than the people in the West, much, much crazier. And you very seldom see an accident, and you very seldom see people getting out of their car fighting with each other. But in the West, where you have the beautiful cars, the homes, the money, the access, the this, that, and the other, yet people want to kill each other for just not putting their blinker on. What do you think attributes to that? That bugs me, to watch people lose their perspective. And I'll tell you what I do in the car later. But to make people lose their perspective on their own life and put other lives in danger, to include the kids who may be in a car, or the kids in the other car, maybe. They just put everyone into jeopardy. What do you think about that?
It's the rat race. Everybody wanting to do better than the other and having more and doing more, and just that comparing yourself to the Joneses, essentially looking at what your neighbor has. Oh, you want it. Well, you got to go out and get it. Now you got to race to it. And so, I see a lot of that. And sometimes I feel myself, getting into that, where you're starting to drive faster and you're driving more defensively. But you can see where road rage would occur. And that's people not managing their emotions, and not, all of this intensity inside of them is just blowing up with the situation that could
No,
have been handled, like you said. He needs driving lessons, kind of a thing. So you can pass it off easily, but it's, people are at the boiling point a lot, just
they
from
become
all
psychotic.
aspects.
They become psychotic sometimes, and
Yeah.
they lose themselves in that rage. It's really interesting. And Louisa, tell me, there in Kenya, do you have the same problems of road rage like we have like in the West?
Not so many cases of people leaving their cars to fight, but yes, there is road rage. My experience has been more or less driving as a woman because remember, this is a very patriarchal society. So the men can get very, very nasty on the road. And that when I was learning to drive, it was very disturbing because it was stressful, you know.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
You're expected, you're overtaking, the other driver says, "Oh, look at that woman." And
Or
now, of course, they try to block you, so everything just becomes so stressful. Or, you know, somebody, maybe you're not driving really fast, you're not in a hurry, but you know, you can get insulted for being too slow. Why are you even on the road and things like that? But with time, that has improved. But that has been my experience on the road. That there's a bit of you know,
no doubt to me.
genderism. Yeah.
Okay, here's my secret. I actually talk to myself when I drive. They say an intelligent sign that a person is aware of themselves is when they talk to themselves. A lot of people oftentimes think that that's a bad thing when you talk to yourself, but it's a sign of great intelligence when you actually talk to yourself. Now, if you sit there, you start talking to yourself, then you start answering yourself, then that's a whole nother conversation. But you know, it's an intelligent sign. So I kind of take liberty with that when I'm in the car, and I'll talk my way through whatever's gonna happen. Doesn't matter. If the guy road rages, I'll say, well, this guy needed to be in front of me more than I needed to be in front of him. So go for it, knock yourself out. You know, I'm perfectly capable. I'm always armed. So I'm perfectly capable, even without a weapon, to take care of myself. So I don't look at that as my eventuality. Like, hey, if he get out of his car, I'm gonna kick him in the butt. You know, I don't look at it that way. But a lot of people do. It is scary when and I'm in the passenger seat and somebody, unlike my taxi driver, says, I'm gonna kill him. It's just son of a, and you're like, what? What? Wait a minute. We just go to the store. It ain't that important. It's just not. It's not that important. But they make it important. I think the inadequacy of their lives, I think that that's what causes them to want to lash out at others because they're in pain about the inadequacy of themselves. I think that's is the center of that universe. And not that they're weak-minded people or slow-witted or uncontrollable. It's just that they're unhappy with themselves. I think when you're unhappy with yourself, it's easy for you to put yourself in jeopardy. I think it stems from that. And no matter what goes on in your life, you have to, you know, give yourself something to look forward to, but also live in the present moment too, and appreciate that moment and appreciate the people in it. That's why I love talking to you two because both of you have been in norm therapy sessions with patients and myself in Overwatch, and we've all worked together with many victims of abuse and survivors of abuse. And the one thing I think we all had the same mindset on when it comes to victims of abuse and survivors of abuse is that there's an element of fear in every one of the abuses that we encounter. If we can link all abuse in the world to any one given thing or two given things, is basically we can link it to fear. Because in order to have abuse in the first place, somebody has to be afraid of somebody else. That's just how it works. If I'm going to take advantage of you sexually, you have to fear me, or I have to intimidate you. If I'm going to take advantage of you physically, you have to fear me so I can beat you. If you're going to be financially abused by me, then you have to fear me so I can take your money and hurt you. So you have to fear me in order to, of course, participate in that abusive circumstance. What do you ladies think about some of the abuses that and atrocities that's committed between relationships, parent, children, children to parent, schools, police? And we can talk about police, I think, forever. Not in a bad way, like most people think I'm going. Although I have literally been drug out of a police, no, out of my car window. I mean, literally, police yanked me out through the window for a routine traffic stop. That has happened to me. talk about that another time. However, what do you think it is that we're doing as a society to one another to not only perpetuate these abuses between one another, but tolerate them for such a long time? Louisa, tell me, what do you think? Why are we doing this?
I think the element of fear is ingrained so deeply in both the person that is being abused and also the abuser, because while let's say, for example, a narcissist is trying to controlling their victim, upon closer examination, there's also something that they seem to have lacked, and they fear now the loss of control. So then it begs, it brings up an interesting paradigm where it seems they both need to, different approaches to the same issue.
Yes,
Yes. So
I would happen to agree with you there 100%. And Kim, what do you think about
It's a level of insecurity, inferiority, lack of drive, confidence, any number of things to attribute back to that, and probably abuse in the abuser's experiences or life, formative years that they had, and they just didn't know any better. They figured that was, what they needed to do because that's what was done to them, and they're carrying that abuse forward. They didn't put a stop to it and end that. They just kept, taking advantage of their victim. And the same with the victim. They've probably been in abusive circumstances before too, and they're growing up in their childhood. Most often, maybe not, maybe there are some cases that not so much, and you find yourself in those circumstances, but I think a lot of it just stems around those past experiences.
Absolutely. You just put something in my head, and you're right. This is a dog eat dog world.
Mm.
So if dogs are always eating each other, proverbially speaking, of course, if dogs are always eating one another, then it beckons that people have very low self-esteem as a result. And I think low self-esteem comes from being beaten down and eaten up by the others. And I think the one thing that catapult people into another existence oftentimes is raising their self-esteem, how good they feel about themselves and how they think they can operate in life on a better level than wherever they are at present. That has to play a big part of how you feel about yourself. And so, Kim, tell me, how do you measure self-esteem in the lives of the victims and survivors out there when you're talking and counseling and of course, teaching them? But how do you measure self-esteem?
Most often times in the abuse victim, it's going to be very low. They weren't shown it. They don't know what it is. They do, they maybe had it, but it got beaten away. So it's, you see it based on their experiences as they talk through their pathology, and we learn more about their circumstances and the traumas that they've endured to know. And then we turn around and give them the tools to help build that self-esteem and build that confidence and build those life skills that they weren't necessarily exposed to. But I think, yeah.
All right, well, I think that's an excellent point. What about you, Louisa? Tell me, in conjunction with that, of course, but add to it the element of confidence and courage and self-esteem. How does that all work together in concert?
I find that when you have low self-esteem, there's a lot of scarcity involved, where you feel that everyone is competing, and these you feel that you're not as good as, or you're made to feel that you're not as good or as confident or as as something as another person. So then
Dynamic,
that's, yeah,
dynamic.
yeah. So then that contributes to a lot of low self-esteem, and that's really unnecessary, because we live in a world where everyone can be um, everyone can shine. So as you said earlier that, everyone wants you to do well, not just better than them. Everyone can do well. But now when you have low self-esteem, then the person feels that, I'm not as good as so and so, I'm not as good as this and that. And that really plays and destroys their psyche and their emotional stability.
Well, I think that you both bring up some pretty interesting points. I think that with low self-esteem, it's like a gateway to disaster. Because if you don't care about you, you begin to believe that others shouldn't care about you either. Mm. And I think that brings an element of vulnerability that's beyond that of the norm, but it also brings an open door to violence, an open door to disaster and pain and suffering when you don't think well of you. And people oftentimes, once they get to the point to where they're not thinking well of themselves, they tend to blame themselves as well. Before you get to low self-esteem, you're normally blaming everyone else. I mean, I've heard this quote so many times in my life, but I'm just going to repeat it. A person who blames others is way off the mark of life. A person who blames himself is halfway there, and a person who blames no one has actually made it. Now, I'm sure we've heard it in various different ways, but when you blame yourself for something, you're actually giving critical thought to it by actually blaming yourself. But if you would just take that critical thought and flip it onto, instead of blaming yourself, asking yourself what you can do about it to make it not so. And we don't make or take that leap of faith in ourselves. So when we start to blame ourselves, we put ourselves on a dismal spiral to nowhere. And I think that that's a very unhealthy way to manage yourself or your inner workings to deal with other people. Because let's face it, everything we do in life is to prepare us to deal with circumstances outside of ourselves. So if we're not doing that and how we feel about ourselves, we're absolutely not going to be able to participate in life on a level where it's beneficial to us. What do you think about that, Kim? You think that what can norm therapy do to help people? And I just want to throw that plug in there now, because norm therapy is what we actually do. But what do you think norm therapy can do for people in order to help them find their way out from that, as we often say, doldrum of hell in which they're living and residing, into a place where they can start making their lives just a little bit better?
It's offering different perspectives and giving them, they sometimes have those blinders on and they're only seeing a certain direction, and to offer up those other opportunities that, what about this? What about that? And also that experiential knowledge that the norm therapists are sharing with the victim or survivor to relate to their story. Everybody is unique and different in their own stories, but there's some aspects that can be compared and related to, and then that helps the victim or survivor be able to see more clearly and have more clarity into their path, into their journey.
Yes, you're absolutely correct, Kim. I think that people need to be able to see. I think that's probably the most important word today. Most people, we were talking earlier before the broadcast, we were talking about cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias. And people want to believe things so badly sometimes that they're so predisposed to looking for their own answers that they already agree with, that they don't look at anything else. And that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. And it's taken hold in our society around the world. We already believe something, so anything outside of the parameter of what we already believe doesn't matter. And that's an interesting topic that hurts people, and it puts people in a place where they make poor decisions because they already believe something that just may not be correct. Can any of you give me an example of those kinds of circumstances?
It goes to the cognitive behaviors in others, and having that fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, not knowing that you can grow. And that example I gave to a friend that lived in her same hometown, she didn't know that she could travel 20 miles and be in another town and experience different things. So it's a lot of that, not thinking that we can do something, but rather just going out and doing it, taking the reins and getting it done.
And I think that requires a certain amount of courage and or corralling those fears and then beating those fears down instead of yourself. What do you think about that, Louis? You think courage will do the job for you sometimes?
Yes, certainly. Because as Kim just mentioned, when you, as a norm therapist, you shift the focus of what the patient is thinking of and what is bringing about this low self-esteem. And then now, as we come in to instill some of the basic life lessons that they may not have quite mastered, and having the courage now to look at themselves and say, okay, so who am I? What am I? What do I stand for? All those basic questions that would help them build themselves up as a person and be solid in who they are. So that requires courage, because the introspection for you to be able to say, okay, so who am I? I am this and I am not that. That is often very scary for people to do, even those who
Yeah.
are not abused, So you do need courage to be able to do that. And I believe our role is to assist them in that process.
Wow, this is like a snap of a finger. We're already 46 minutes in. How is this possible? Good Lord. I'm enjoying this conversation because there's so
We're
many
having fun.
go in this. Because, I like having fun on these, but we had to put out the actual information first so we can have something to talk about. Life 101 is not easy. It just isn't. There's nothing in life that's easy. I think that most people say these cliches because they want to be able to get through it and get through it unscathed. But that doesn't happen in real life. Everybody's scathed in some way as you go through life. You just are. It's how you deal with being scathed that measures who you truly are. And people want every outcome to be great. And then you oftentimes look to your left and see, my neighbor just got a new car. They just put a new roof on. They're living a greater life. They're going out to all of these different events all the time. And I'm sitting over here and I'm miserable and I don't know what to do. And so they become comparative in their happiness and they benchmark themselves to something that's unrealistic because maybe their neighbors, spent the first 15 years that they weren't living there in hell. So when they got there, they can enjoy getting a new roof and they can enjoy, going out all the time. So we always measure people from what we see in ourselves instead of measuring them based on their own circumstance or their extrapolated circumstance in your particular vision or understanding of your neighbor, just using that as an example. It's a shame that we do that we miss entire swaths of people because our brain housing group is so lazy that we don't take a couple more minutes to say, well, maybe they came from a place where, they lived without windows. And that's why they're always walking around naked inside because they never had windows. They were in a tenement facing another brick wall for 20 years. We don't know. And we don't endeavor to find out. That's our biggest problem. We don't. Why? Lack of courage. And I think that at Norm Therapy, we teach courage as well. Courage is not something that you're going to always figure out on your own. Sometimes you need someone else to help you through it. But anyway, I'm going to ask a couple questions from the audience. Tell me. Okay. How do we solve the problem in poor treatment to one another and breaking these generational bonds? How do we resolve that to stop people from becoming cyclical in their pain and in their family, and they just keep revolving and going over and over and over? What do we do to break that generational curse, so to speak?
help them to see more clearly as the impact that it's having on others and to themselves. Sometimes we don't see that when we're in the victimhood and understand the dynamic. We think that we're alone and no one else is suffering. So it's being able to open up that and look around and seeing outside of yourself and seeing other people and just learning from that. A lot of self-awareness goes into that, I think.
I think that's a great answer. And tell me something, Louisa, how do you feel about what else do we need to do to kind of help people figure out that we can do better? Tell me, what else can we do?
Um, as we provide abuse care, my belief is that once an abused victim is on their way to thriving and has survived the entire experience, then they don't become the abuser, because that's how
Yeah.
the cycle is propagated. When you endure abuse, then you become the abuser, and it just continues like that.
Yeah.
So offering abuse care and non-therapy to such people, I believe would really break that cycle, because then it will not be propagated.
One of the things I like about norm therapy, and having been the creator of norm therapy, but also seeing its long-term benefits over the past 3 decades, and that is that you can actually measure in people when they come in and benchmark, how fearful they are of everything, how dismal things look to them, how their outlooks are not really there until we start. I think you both use this word often in this entire session, and that's, perspective. So we start providing different perspective, but we don't just follow different perspectives and add different perspectives. We also uh, help people to understand that this may not work for you. Not norm therapy, but the perspective. So we have to have a multiple of perspectives that we use and that we share with people. How do we omnidirectionally in every direction? How do we do that? How, I know how, of course, but I'm trying to pose it in a way where you can answer for the audience. How do we get people to look at different perspectives, Kim?
I think first and foremost, it's the person's normal, as we always say. It's not your normal or my normal. It's their normal, and having them have a clearer picture as to what that's going to look like for them in their life.
I think that's a great answer. And you, Louisa, tell me, how do we get them to see these new perspectives?
Well, just encouraging them to view it from different perspectives. So if for example, you're in a family, so how did you view it? How do you think so and so viewed it? And
Mhm.
just examining it from different points of view and encouraging them to look at it like that.
Because of course, it's not our job as norm therapists to cure you. That's not what we do. We don't cure anyone. We don't even try to cure you. That doesn't exist. Cure for the human dynamic. There's no such thing. All it is you're taking an opportunity to condition yourselves to your surrounding, but in a positive and productive manner. That's what we're trying to get people to do. But we can't do that for you. I can't make you like me or love your life or love somebody or hate them. That's not my job. I can't do that. But what I can do is I can help you see and understand how these other people and entities fit into your life, because you otherwise didn't see them before. Because had you seen them, you wouldn't be sitting here in this session with us now. If you already knew better, you would be doing better. So I think it's important that people understand that when we are trying and we're meeting with our patients, most people don't know, the ladies, and Kim's the manager of Norm Therapy worldwide. So she's like she's at the gate. She's the guardian at the gate. They don't know that uh, we're not here to change your mind or make you feel bad or overly elated about your life. She'll tell you that at the end of our norm therapy academic portion of training, we then have this area called MOTT, M-O-T-T, Methods of Teaching and Training. And I developed that at the end of norm therapy for a reason, because we don't just counsel people on helping them ameliorate or make better their lives, but we also teach them how to teach. We teach our norm therapists how to teach. And they actually conduct classes. They do mock and surprise drills on one another teaching, and they're heavily critiqued and evaluated during this process. And you may want to ask, why are you teaching them to teach? Because what we do is we don't just counsel, we teach you a new way of life. Those life lessons, life 101, those life lessons you otherwise missed throughout the course of your life that have caused you to end up in these circumstances with these narcissistic men or women, or these, challenging situations you otherwise would have made it through had you received those life lessons. I said to someone not too long ago, and I'm gonna let you ladies close us out on this, but I said something to someone, you were a daddy's girl and you sat on your daddy's lap, and he says, honey, I love you so much. You're the apple of my eye. I'll protect you. I'll do everything I can possibly do in life to make sure you're okay, and that legacy of our family lives on. Then she leaves. She goes to college and she meets new people and she travels and she has fun, and all of a sudden she falls in love with Rick, and he may be a member of a band, but he's an extreme narcissist, and he has your daughter's nose, and he's yanking her around town, biting her nose, and he's hurting her. He may be beating her. He may be psychologizing or using psychological operations, and, well, we call it psyops, but basically psyops on her to brainwash and condition her against her own family. A lot of things her father didn't prepare her for, because there's different stages and levels of abuse out there. And not always can a dad think of everything, even though he was the greatest dad and protected her. But once you leave home, those skills, those abuse mitigating skills, have to transfer into real life and in other circumstances. And we help people to do that as well at Norm Therapy. Ladies, give us your thought, the audience, of course, on what you think about that. I'm going to let Louisa tell us first, and then Kim, you're going to close us out before I read our verbatim statement.
All right. You're right that getting prepared for the real world as a parent, as a father, as a mother is something that you may not totally be, you only do as a parent what you feel is, or what you know to do. So if we have more education and more awareness of the other types of skills that, that we are taught about in our training program, like situational awareness and, self-awareness and things like that, it would really help as the children move out and they go off into the world, and will reduce the cases of such incidences. But as we said, that is life 101. We may not always have it. That's why we are here. That's why we pray that we hope that what our initiative at Norm Therapy continues to gain traction and make the world a better place. I know that sounds very cliche, but it's true. Make the world a better place.
One person at a time.
Yep.
One person at a time. I absolutely agree. Kim, please.
Right.
Thank you for that remark, Louisa.
Yeah, there's a certain naivete within that example that you gave of, she looks at men as, well, he should be protecting me, essentially, and that dynamic of that putting on a pedestal, perhaps. And so when someone comes along and starts doing destructive behaviors, she doesn't have a clue what to do. In that regard, and maybe she doesn't know who to talk to or who to turn to, and that's where norm therapy is in place to be able to talk to individuals in these circumstances and to bring them through their experiences and have a deeper understanding of themselves and what they've been through, so that they can move forward in life more productively.
Well, thank you, ladies. That was a wonderful opinion, Kim. Excellent as well, Louisa. I wish we could talk more because I kind of want to tell some jokes a little bit about the things we have experienced, but I wanted to keep this topic, Life 101, to be a serious one. So when people look at it in the future, they will see a very clear-minded understanding of what we're trying to convey to them. So I don't want to cloud it with jokes, but there's some funny things that happen to us all the time when we watch people go through them, and when they're really not funny. But because we've seen it so many times in our lives, we're starting to laugh at it. And that's a shame that we do that as a society, because oftentimes we laugh at things that we should not be laughing at. So I can talk for days on that, but I'm going to let that one go this time. Let me say, if you've enjoyed and got something out of today's session, please show your support. Of course, by sharing this video, liking it, and move forward. And of course, making a comment. Go to GoArrow, GoArrow.org. GoArrow.org and normtherapy.com in order to explore the opportunities and seek help for yourself or someone needing our services. Someone somewhere needs to have a session with a norm therapist to help them extricate themselves from their lives of abuse. And if you want to participate in any of our live streams, our sessions, our paid sessions, by the way, for victims and survivor, or if you'd like to become a norm therapist and you think you'll qualify, go check out our prerequisites on the websites, both normtherapy.com and goarrow.org, and contact us at contact@normtherapy.com so we can, of course, evaluate and see where we can put you in our next cohort this summer. Thank you for joining us as we look forward to seeing you again on Sunday, May 19th, where I'll be interviewing Karonda Mooney. She's a norm therapist intake specialist or norm therapist level 3 certified. So I look forward to having her on board. Ladies, I thank you very much. Probably on this call alone, I've watched at least 100 more of my Jimmy Carter messages pop on my phone. So probably at about 300 and something by now. That's really interesting watching that tick up. Thank you very much. I really appreciate having you ladies here, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Michael. Bye-bye.